Battle of Sufetula, the battle that changed everything. What happens when a bureaucrat-turned-commander faces off against a rebel exarch with a throne, a daughter, and a death wish? Why did a desert-born army march over 700 miles just to siege a city they couldn't take, only to conquer an empire with a single gate? This isn't just the Battle of Sufetula. It's a tale of miscalculated ambition, mid-battle marriage proposals, and a cavalry charge so perfectly timed it could have been choreographed by fate itself. Let's dive in. Just 2 decades earlier, the Near East was a chessboard of ancient empires. But by 646 AD, the pieces had been swept off the board. The Sassanid Empire, a Persian powerhouse for over 400 years, had been steamrolled into oblivion. Its last Shah was being chased across Iran like a bad debt. In the north, Muslim forces had reached the Caucasus Mountains, effectively boxing in the Byzantine Empire within its Anatolian shell. Constantinople was now a fortress surrounded by a sea of change. With Rome and Persia no longer offering fresh conquests, the Rashidun Caliphate turned its gaze westward. And oh, what a tempting target lay there. After Constans Sekud's failed counterattack on Egypt, Caliph Uthman's foster brother, Abdullah ibn Saud, began poking around the Roman Berber lands west of Egypt. These weren't full-blown invasions, just raids, but they returned with slaves, cattle, and treasure so abundant that it made Egypt look like a warm-up act. Abdullah wrote to Uthman, "This place is basically a treasure chest with a loose lid." Uthman agreed and authorized a 10,000-strong force from Arabia. It was a young army, full of tribal warriors, including one son of Amr ibn al-As, 2 sons of Caliph Umar, 2 sons of al-Hakam, one of whom would become Marwan. They joined Abdullah at Fustat and merged with another 10,000 Egyptian troops, forming a 20,000-strong invasion force. Mounted mostly on camels and horses, they were ready to gallop west. The march begins. From Fustat to Barca, Abdullah crossed the Nile, skirted past Alexandria, and took a desert shortcut to the Mediterranean coastal road. After 6 weeks of marching, the army reached Barca, a city previously seized by Amr ibn al-As. But they weren't done. They pushed another 700 miles around the Bay of Sirte, enduring the North African summer like seasoned desert wolves. The Arabs thrived in the heat. This was their element. When they reached Tripoli, the welcome mat was nowhere to be found. The city was heavily fortified, unlike the friendly Cyrenaican towns. Abdullah laid siege, blocking the landward side and deploying artillery at the harbor walls to strike any ship foolish enough to approach. Meanwhile, Gregory, the Exarch of Africa, was preparing his main army at Sufetula, his inland capital. He sent naval reinforcements from Carthage to Tripoli. But thanks to Abdullah's artillery, the ships had to land on unprotected beaches outside the city walls. The Roman reinforcements, exhausted from their sea voyage, were ambushed by Muslim infantry from 2 directions. They had no time to form ranks, no shelter, and no chance. They were cut down to the last man. Tripoli, however, remained stubbornly shut. Abdullah realized 2 things. Tripoli wasn't falling anytime soon. Gregory was readying for a showdown at Sufetula. So, like a savvy chess player, Abdullah lifted the siege and turned west, leaving Tripoli behind like a bad date. As they marched toward Sufetula, the Rashidun army plundered the wealthiest region of Roman Africa. They weren't tethered to supply lines. They were mobile, ruthless, and efficient. Gregory, meanwhile, had declared independence from Constantinople in 647, riding a wave of support from Romanized Africans and native Berbers. He was no longer just a governor. He was a rebel king. And now, 2 armies were on a collision course. Now pause for a sec. Step into the extraordinary. Subscribe to Eccentric Digital Pixel. Welcome to the wild frontier of creativity, where pixels pulse with imagination and every frame tells a story you've never seen before. We don't follow trends, we bend reality. Get exclusive access to jaw-dropping digital creations. Be the first to witness new drops by turning on notifications. Don't just scroll, experience the pixel revolution. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to never miss a masterpiece. Because normal is boring, and you were born to see the world differently. When the Muslim army passed through Gabes, the Exarch Gregory received word faster than a Berber on horseback. He didn't wait for the enemy to knock, he decided to meet them halfway. But Gregory's army was heavy, mostly infantry, and about as nimble as a siege tower in molasses. He shifted his forces to Fez, 30 kilometers from Sufetula, and set up camp. A covering force was placed slightly ahead to act as a tripwire. But before the Romans could even finish unpacking their tents, Rashidun light cavalry smashed into the forward units like a sandstorm, sending them reeling back in panic. Gregory, rattled by the speed and strength of the Muslim horsemen, abandoned Fez and retreated to a position just 4 miles east of Sufetula. There, he dug in, close enough to enjoy logistical supremacy, safe retreat, and natural defenses. The Muslims arrived soon after and pitched camp just shy of Gregory's line. An emissary was sent, likely with a polite surrender or die note, but was rejected. Both sides deployed for battle on the arid plain, flanked by 2 high ridges to the north and south. Gregory's formation was defensive, anchored to those ridges. Abdullah ibn Sa'd, recognizing the strategic value of the heights, sent troops to occupy them. A smart move that gave him observation superiority. But here's where the comedy of command begins. Abdullah ibn Sa'd was no Amr ibn al-As. He was a bureaucrat, not a battlefield lion. His troops saw him as an accountant with a sword, and he didn't do much to change that perception. He retreated behind the lines, far from danger. Gregory, meanwhile, was no braver. He oversaw the battle from a throne inside Sufetula, sipping wine while others bled. The actual fighting was left to subordinates, who clashed fiercely at dawn the next day. The battlefield was a flat plain, but the ridges prevented flanking. With both commanders essentially absent, the battle devolved into a grinding slugfest. Days passed, blood flowed, no side gained ground. Then, Gregory had an idea. If you can't beat the enemy, assassinate their leader. Gregory offered his legendary daughter's hand in marriage to any warrior who killed Abdullah. She was said to be beautiful, intelligent, and valiant. A triple threat. Morale in the Roman camp skyrocketed. Every soldier, from Berber to Byzantine, now had a personal reason to fight. Word reached Abdullah. Already insecure, he now felt like a walking target. His confidence plummeted. In retaliation, he offered the same daughter to any Muslim who killed Gregory. Then he retreated to his tent, probably wondering if he should have stayed in accounting. The stalemate continued until a Berber defector approached Zubair, one of Abdullah's officers. He revealed that Gregory's position near Sufetula's northern gate was thinly defended, and gave Zubair a route to exploit it. Zubair, bold and charismatic, proposed a flanking raid. Abdullah, desperate for a win, gave him command of the mobile reserve, 2,000 strong. Zubair was swarmed by volunteers, but he chose 30 of the fiercest warriors. When asked what the plan was, he famously said, "I am attacking, defend me from the rear, and I shall defend you from the front." That night, under the cover of darkness, Zubair and his elite squad positioned themselves behind the northern ridge, ready to strike. The next morning, battle resumed as usual. At noon, both armies broke contact. The Romans quickly, the Muslims suspiciously slowly. Distracted by the din of war, Gregory and his guards didn't notice as Zubair and his 30 warriors galloped into Sufetula through what would be remembered as the Gate of Treachery. The trap was sprung. The tide was turning. As the midday heat pressed down like a hammer, the Roman and Muslim armies disengaged, one side weary, the other quietly scheming. Then, like a whisper turned roar, Zubair and his 30 warriors burst through Sufetula's northern gate, catching the city's defenders flat-footed. The Exarch's guard, stunned but loyal, formed a hasty line. But Zubair's elite squad, hardened by desert warfare and driven by purpose, smashed through like a lance through parchment. The path to Gregory was clear. In the chaos, Gregory, seated in regal comfort, saw a lone rider approaching. He assumed it was an envoy, perhaps bringing terms or a message. He didn't react. That was his final mistake. Zubair closed the distance, leapt from his horse, and struck Gregory down. The Exarch's head was sliced cleanly from his body, a moment so swift and brutal it left the palace guards frozen in disbelief. Word of Gregory's death raced across the plain like wildfire. The retreating Roman infantry, already disorganized, plunged into confusion. Their leader was gone. Their cause, suddenly hollow. Then came the hammer blow. At the perfect moment, Zubair's mounted reserve crested the north ridge, sabers gleaming, lances leveled. They charged into the left wing of the Roman army, which was now a panicked mass of men with no orders and no hope. The bulk of the Muslim infantry, sensing the shift, turned and advanced, locking the Romans into a deadly pincer. Surrounded, pressured, and leaderless, the Exarchate army collapsed. Soldiers scattered in all directions, some throwing down weapons, others trying to flee. Zubair's cavalry reaped a bloody toll. Within hours, the plain outside Sufetula was littered with corpses. Romans, Berbers, Vandals, Greeks, all fallen under the desert sun. Several thousand Roman soldiers managed to retreat toward Sufetula, believing its walls would protect them. They were wrong. Zubair, now in full control, sent squadrons to every gate, sealing the city like a tomb. The retreating columns, exhausted and desperate, were ambushed by Muslim cavalry and cut to pieces. The Rashidun triumph at Sufetula is often cited as the moment Roman Africa was lost. But that's only partly true. Once the silver, gold, and cattle were gathered and distributed, Abdullah ibn Sa'd turned his gaze to the real capital, Carthage. He laid siege, but it was a stalemate. His army was overextended, his siege train barely functional. Carthage couldn't push him out, and he couldn't break in. But the rumors of Gregory's gruesome death had done their work. The city's leaders, fearing a repeat, asked for terms. Abdullah, ever the accountant, accepted a vast payment of Roman gold in exchange for peace. He kept what he'd conquered and left Africa alone. 3 months later, the Muslim army returned to Fustat, their camels groaning under the weight of treasure. The Medina treasury swelled, and Abdullah had technically won, but he'd also abandoned the conquest before it was complete. In late 648, while Africa quieted, Muawiyah, governor of Syria, launched a naval expedition to Cyprus. He seized the island without resistance and exacted a tribute of 7,000 dinars annually. With North Africa winding down, the Rashidun Caliphate's expansion paused. But the land war with Eastern Rome had calcified at the Taurus Mountains, so both sides turned to the sea. If Constantinople held naval supremacy, it could strike Egypt, Syria, or Africa at will. But if the Caliphate seized control, the Mediterranean could become a Muslim lake. Both empires began building massive fleets. And here, Abdullah ibn Sa'd, timid on land, transformed into a sea wolf. He crushed Constans II's navy in the first true Muslim naval triumph, clearing the way for a future attack on Constantinople itself. From a people once scorned and subjugated, the Arabs had risen like a sandstorm, sweeping across empires and rewriting the map in just 2 decades. And this is only the beginning. Next up, the fall of the Sassanid Empire. If you've been gripped by this tale of daring raids, desert warfare, and naval conquest, don't miss what's coming next. Follow us, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss another legendary story from the golden age of conquest. The storm rolls on.